My name is Ann Bookout, and I'm the 20th Regent of the Mount Vernon Ladies Association. There were a number of leather-bound books that were presented to the founding leaders. Washington was given 7 of these books as acts of Congress. There were only 2 that were embossed in gold with the word President on the front. This is the only one that he ever wrote in the margins of.
Well, my name's Carol Cadieux, and I serve as the Robert H. Smith Senior Curator and Vice President of Collections here at Mount Vernon. The Acts of Congress has had a remarkable journey, and it is truly awe-inspiring to think of the fact that it is today in pristine condition and still so beautifully bound, just as it was in the 18th century, despite its remarkable journey. In this book, we see Washington and his colleagues really putting into printed form those concepts that they have been struggling with over the Constitutional Convention, where they have been laboring for many, sometimes very hot days, trying to figure out exactly the shape of the new nation. They all realized that they were setting precedents to be followed.
Well, the Ladies Association didn't know that the book was going to auction until after the catalog had already gone to print. The reason why I attended was because we wanted to have a representative in the room. We worked very hard to find a donor or an angel who would help bring this book home to Mount Vernon, because we are a nonprofit institution and we rely on no government money. We decided as a board to muster our resources and to go to the auction to be as competitive as we could possibly be.
And we have come now to a very proud moment. We are selling George Washington's personal copy of the Acts of Congress.
You could feel the energy in the room. And of course, as it neared the actual sale, it heightened. You knew it was a momentous occasion.
$3 million now, 3,200,000 lots of paddles. At 3,200,000 now, several paddles, 3,500,000 back to Paul.
And I was able to join the bidding after the first round of fast and furious bidding, but that was already at $5 million when I got in.
At 4,500,000, 4,800,000 back to Paul. $5 million with the lady again.
And it continued on until finally there were 2 bidders in the room.
8,600,000, 8,700,000. She's bidding all by herself.
I knew where my limit was. The board had given me strong marching orders, and I knew where we were going to stop.
Then selling for $8,700,000. And that goes to Mount Vernon.
And there was, I think, a real sense of joy that this rare piece of history was not going to go back into a drawer for another 50 years, that it was coming home to Mount Vernon, where it was going to be shared with scholars who can see it for themselves and do research and write about the legacy of George Washington and the founding of this nation.
We're just absolutely delighted to be able to welcome it home after so many years, such a long journey, but clearly some very, very good caretakers in the meantime. George Washington is very, very exacting with his books, and we see that he takes great care of them. He has them in beautiful glass-fronted shelves in his personal library at Mount Vernon, often putting a wonderful flourish of his grand signature in the upper right-hand corner of the title page, which he does with this volume. He also often, especially on very important books, puts a terrific book plate. And this is a book plate that Washington ordered from England. It's engraved in London. This volume, I think, was probably pretty special to him because it has both his engraved book plate, his signature on the title page, but what is even more distinctive and more unusual is that Washington makes notes in the margin, and we almost never see Washington writing any marginalia. In several places, he very carefully brackets his powers and his role as president. We see him, for instance, in Article 1 of the Constitution here, bracketing and writing the words president next to those duties that he is to follow, and how he is to follow the enacting of legislation, how you have bills that are ratified by Congress in the House of Representatives and in the Senate, and then sent on to George Washington as president for either approval or veto. And then again in Article 2, you see him bracketing not only putting president, but also powers, which is an interesting word that he uses. And it shows the powers that he has to appoint justices to the Supreme Court, to ratify treaties, to appoint ambassadors. So he's really sort of understanding exactly those powers that are his and those that he must delegate to the other important branches of Congress.
To me, it struck me almost as he was looking at a manual, and this was the roadmap of what were his responsibilities. And I believe he was keenly aware of the use of the presidential power to further the public good. So it really, to see it in person, it's chilling.
He didn't mark uniformly everything that he was supposed to do as president, but what's interesting is that in one bracket he does note required. And I think this is very telling because it's really Washington noting what he absolutely must not forget to do. And that addresses the, what we would call today sort of the State of the Union address, the reports to Congress on the state of the nation.
The Acts of Congress will be on view in our Donald W. Reynolds Museum for the public to see, and we hope that we will be able to also take it around the country to different venues for people who cannot come to Mount Vernon. The book after that will be permanently housed in the Fred W. Smith National Library for the study of George Washington. This library will be a repository for all material on Washington, will serve as a place for scholars to come and reside for short periods of time or up to 6 months or a year, research and write about George Washington. It is a presidential library, and in fact, George Washington wrote to a friend 2 years before he died. He said, "I have not houses to build except one to house my manuscripts, papers, and books, which are voluminous and may be of interest." So we are, after 200 years, building that library and bringing home the Acts of Congress where it belongs.